Imagine you're standing outside your farmhouse before a sunrise on a September morning in 1925. The sky is dark, a storm is rolling in, and suddenly a silver giant nearly 700 feet long appears out of the clouds. For a moment, it looks impossible. Then someone quietly says, "It looks like it's breaking in two." Another answers, "My God, it is." Most stories have another side. This one's just a little stranger. I'm Bill, and this is Buffalo Air Park. Let's dive in. Pull up a chair and grab your favorite drink, because today we're talking about one of the strangest aviation disasters in American history. Long before the Hindenburg became the world's most famous airship, the United States had its own rigid airship program. Its flagship was the USS Shenandoah, America's first rigid airship, and in many ways, it represented everything people believed aviation could become. Built using knowledge gained from an unfinished German Zeppelin after World War I, the Shenandoah stretched an incredible 680 feet from nose to tail. It looked less like an airplane and more like something from a science fiction magazine, years before science fiction really looked like that. But one of the strangest parts of the ship wasn't visible at all. Inside the aluminum framework were dozens of gas cells made from goldbeater skin, a remarkable gas-tight material produced from the outer membranes of cattle intestines. It reportedly required tissue from hundreds of thousands of cattle to build the airship. It sounds ridiculous today, but at the time, it was one of the best materials engineers had. Unlike the German Zeppelins, which relied on highly flammable hydrogen, the Shenandoah was filled with helium. That made it dramatically safer, but helium was also incredibly expensive and available only in limited quantities. Every cubic foot mattered. Captain Lieutenant Commander Zachary Lansdowne knew that better than anyone. Trying to conserve helium and reduce unnecessary weight, he requested permission to remove 10 of the ship's 18 automatic gas relief valves. On paper, it seemed reasonable. In reality, it meant the ship could no longer safely handle rapid climbs. If it rose too quickly, the helium inside the gas cells expanded faster than it could escape, placing enormous stress on the airship's framework. It was one of those decisions that seemed harmless, until the weather got involved. By late summer of 1925, the Navy had another mission for the Shenandoah. Instead of military experiments, they wanted a publicity tour. The giant airship would visit cities across the Midwest, fly over state fairs, and demonstrate American aviation technology to thousands of spectators. Lansdowne objected. He had grown up in Ohio and knew exactly what late summer weather across the Midwest could do. Powerful squall lines regularly developed with little warning, producing violent updrafts that even conventional airplanes tried to avoid. He asked that the trip be postponed. His request was denied. The schedule had already been announced, newspapers had promoted the tour, and canceling it would disappoint the public. So, on September 2nd, 1925, the Shenandoah departed New Jersey and headed west. Everything went according to plan, until the early hours of September 3rd. Over Noble County, Ohio, the airship flew directly into the kind of storm Lansdowne had feared. A powerful updraft caught the nose and launched the enormous ship skyward at nearly 1,000 feet per minute, more than twice what the remaining relief valves could safely handle. Inside, the helium expanded. The aluminum structure began twisting. Crew members could hear the framework groaning under loads it had never been designed to withstand. One officer reportedly looked up and quietly said, "There she goes." Moments later, the Shenandoah broke apart in midair. The control car plunged towards the ground, killing Captain Lansdowne and much of the command crew almost instantly. The stern section, amazingly, settled into a long, controlled descent through trees and into a nearby valley. Every man aboard survived. The bow had even a stranger fate. Freed from the weight of the control car, it suddenly became far lighter than the surrounding air. Instead of falling, it climbed. 7 crewmen found themselves riding a torn, partially destroyed airship section thousands of feet into the storm clouds with almost no control over where it was going. For nearly an hour, they drifted across the Ohio countryside like an enormous runaway balloon. Eventually, they descended onto the farm of Ernest Nichols. Nichols saw ropes hanging from the sky, grabbed one, and tied it to nearby trees. Just imagine explaining that morning to your neighbors. The crew still had one problem. The helium wanted to keep it flying, so they borrowed Nichols' shotgun. They started shooting holes in the gas cells until the bow finally settled onto the ground. It sounds completely unbelievable. It's also exactly what happened. When daylight arrived, the crash site became a national attraction. An estimated 10,000 people descended on the rural hills around the wreckage. Some simply wanted to see history. Others wanted souvenirs. Pieces of the Shenandoah disappeared almost immediately. Sections of aluminum became household repairs. Waterproof fabric found new life as lampshades, porch coverings, and even homemade raincoats that locals nicknamed Shenandoah Slickers. One farmer began charging admission. Another reportedly tried dragging part of the wreckage home with his tractor before federal authorities intervened. The Navy eventually recovered truckloads of stolen material, but much of the airship simply vanished into local history. Even Captain Lansdowne's missing class ring became part of the legend. It was assumed stolen after the crash. Then, nearly 12 years later, a woman working in her garden near the crash site discovered a gold ring hanging from the stem of a mustard plant. Sometimes history has a strange way of giving things back. The official investigation concluded that severe weather caused the accident, but many believed poor decisions had placed the Shenandoah in that weather to begin with. One of the loudest critics was Army Colonel Billy Mitchell. He publicly accused military leadership of negligence, arguing that aviation decisions were being made by officers who didn't understand aviation itself. His remarks led directly to the famous court-martial that effectively ended his military career, but history would eventually prove many of his warnings correct. Today, little remains of the Shenandoah itself. But if you visit Noble County, Ohio, you'll still find monuments, museums, and even a local high school where teams are proudly known as the Zeps. Not many aircraft leave that kind of legacy. And maybe that's fitting, because the USS Shenandoah wasn't destroyed by one catastrophic mistake. It was brought down by a chain of small decisions, engineering compromises, political pressure, and a storm that arrived exactly when one experienced airship captain feared it would. Sometimes that's how aviation history unfolds. Not with one dramatic moment, but with a series of ordinary choices that slowly become extraordinary. And that wraps up another tale from aviation's stranger side. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies.